Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. A two-ringed evil soul master would definitely be able to slaughter a huge number of normal two-ringed soul masters with his or her own evil soul skills. However, the gap would be a lot smaller when a five-ringed evil soul master fought against a five-ringed soul master. Eventually, after both types of soul masters had reached title Doluor, evil soul masters would be more or less the same as normal soul masters, except for some advantages which were near negligible. Zhongli Wu had ranked him alongside his other transcendent Doluor after Huo Yuhao had demonstrated the courage to fight 10 different people. Even if Huo Yuhao was super arrogant, he would never have proposed such a ludicrous challenge if he did not even possess the abilities of a transcendent Doluor. Hence, Zhongli Wu only planned to send the transcendent Doluor under him to fight Huo Yuhao. Sending any title Doluor would just be a waste of his precious resources. After all, it was very difficult to train an evil soul master to become a title Doluor. Those dead title Doluor could have been war machines on the battlefield. Hence, the second person Huo Yuhao was about to fight was Feng Ling. Feng Ling was the second strongest evil soul master among those who had followed Zhongli Wu to the battlefield. She was right behind him in the pecking order. The fact that Zhongli Wu had decided to send her as the second person meant that he did not want to lose any more of his powerful evil soul masters. Feng Ling floated to a position which was about 100 meters away from Huo Yuhao before landing on the ground. She was also robed in black, even though she was not covering her head with a hood. She was undoubtedly beautiful, even though she was already a middle-aged woman. Her skin was still extremely fair, and she radiated a devilish, seductive aura. It was not the first time Huo Yuhao had seen the vice leader of the Holy Ghost Church. Previously, when he first met Feng Ling, he could still remember clearly how pressuring it was to even be in her presence. This time, when they finally met again, she had become his opponent. Feng Ling had a strange pair of eyes. Even though they were not particularly huge, they were alluring in a very different way. There were two dark red streaks, which extended from the corners of her eyes to her temples. These streaks on her face gave her a very devilish look. Huo Yuhao. Feng Ling spoke coldly. Huo Yuhao revealed a faint smile and said, "Hello, Vice Leader. We meet again." Feng Ling replied coldly, "You are Tang Wu, the person who participated in the Radiant City Elite Soul Engineering Tournament, right?" Huo Yuhao smiled and answered, "That's right. It seems like the vice leader is very observant." "Very well." Feng Ling's voice was becoming colder as the black robe on her body started to flutter, even though there was no wind at all. Suddenly a piercing phoenix roar could be heard from her body as her soul rings started to rise around her. 3 purple, 5 black, and 1 red ring. Her soul ring combination far exceeded the optimal soul ring combination. Her soul rings were radiating a brilliant glow onto their surroundings. She did not have a single 100-year soul ring. Even her lousiest soul ring was a 1,000-year soul ring. Even Huo Yuhao was a little startled after seeing her 9 soul rings appear before his eyes. He was amazed at the power she had demonstrated. No wonder she's the vice leader of the Holy Ghost Church. Huo Yuhao did not know exactly what rank Feng Ling was at. However, he could roughly tell from her aura that she should be somewhere around rank 96. Because of the fact that she was an evil soul master, she could even be rank 97. This vice leader would definitely pose a bigger challenge than Wu Yun. On top of that, Feng Ling was now using a spiritual defensive soul tool. She would be a lot more resistant to Huo Yuhao's spirit eyes soul skills. Huo Yuhao's face revealed a faint glow, as his icy war god's armor gave off a mystical glow under his control. Suddenly, the purple soul ring on Feng Ling's body started to emit a bright light. At the very next instant, a pair of dark purple wings extended behind her back. A powerful aura was instantly released as it swarmed and surged towards Huo Yuhao. Phoenix wings. What kind of phoenix is this? Why are its wings purple? Huo Yuhao had previously seen Feng Ling in action. However, back then, Feng Ling did not go all out. This time, the vice leader of the Holy Ghost Church was undoubtedly going to use all of her powers to take him down. There were no flames at all despite the immense pressure the wings were radiating. That is darkness. Darkness Phoenix. No, that would be wrong. It can't be the Darkness Phoenix. The Darkness Phoenix's aura should be pure, and would definitely not be so cold. This must be the Evil Phoenix. Yes, this was Feng Ling's martial soul, the Evil Phoenix. This matched exactly with her title, which was the Evil Phoenix Doluo. The Evil Phoenix Doluo, Feng Ling. Intense soul power fluctuations were radiating from the gigantic Evil Phoenix wings, as the surrounding light started to become dimmer. It seemed as though the entire sky had turned grey. A powerful, suffocating sensation made Huo Yuhao find it hard to breathe, even though he was within his icy war god's armor. Feng Ling is really powerful. Yang Xiaozhe, who was watching from the distance along with the other powerful individuals from the Shrek Academy, was startled as he muttered, "Evil Phoenix. So she's actually the Evil Phoenix Doluo. I can't believe Feng Ling is the person who is holding that title. It seems like she has also joined the Holy Ghost Church." After hearing what he was muttering, two people looked over at him with unfriendly eyes. One of them was naturally Cai Maya, Yang Xiaozhe's wife and the vice dean of the Martial Soul Department. The other person was none other than Xian Lina, the Valkyrie Doluo. Yang Xiaozhe forced a cough, as he quickly regained his composure. Of course he knew who Feng Ling was. To be even more precise, he had once shared an ill-fated relationship with her. Back then, when Yang Xiaozhe had just completed his training, he had been the most talented individual in the new batch of students from Shrek Academy. He was not only the disciple of the dragon god Doluo, but was also extremely powerful and handsome. Coupled with his powerful martial soul, the Radiant Phoenix, he was blessed with every single thing which could make him successful. However, Yang Xiaozhe tended to be a little flirtatious when it came to relationships. Otherwise, he would not have developed a poor relationship with the Valkyrie Doluo. His relationship with Feng Ling had happened before he had even gotten together with Xian Lina. Back then, when he had just completed his training, he had bumped into Feng Ling. Both of them had phoenixes as their martial souls. Back then, Feng Ling was a lot weaker, and the evil within her phoenix martial soul had yet to be awakened. Hence, it seemed a lot more like the Darkness Phoenix, especially when it was easy to mistake the evilness as dark-type energy. Even though the Radiant Phoenix had just met the Darkness Phoenix, Yang Xiaozhe did not ostracize her. He felt that he did not have to do so because his very own teacher, Mu Yan, was also very good friends with Long Xiaoyao. In fact, the Radiant Holy Dragon and Darkness Holy Dragon even became a very inspirational tale for everyone in the Doluo continent. Hence, instead of finding Feng Ling repulsive, he was very interested in her. After all, he might just be able to start another inspirational tale with her. Yang Xiaozhe was young, handsome, powerful, and extremely charismatic. Before long, both of them got together, and became a lot closer very quickly. However, their blissful days did not last very long. After being together for about 3 months or so, Feng Ling's evil aura was suddenly awakened one day. In fact, if Yang Xiaozhe were to only find out about it later, he would have been killed and consumed by her. This was a special kind of connection the Evil Phoenix had with the Radiant Phoenix. To be more precise, Feng Ling's Evil Phoenix was only able to awaken so quickly after Yang Xiaozhe had developed an intimate relationship with her. Hence, a huge battle broke out between Yang Xiaozhe and Feng Ling. Yang Xiaozhe was able to suppress Feng Ling with his superior powers. However, he could not bear to kill her. After all, he had already developed very powerful feelings for her. Feng Ling was the first woman in his life. In the end, he could not help but let Feng Ling flee. Afterward, he also left. From that day onwards, he had never seen Feng Ling again. Even though he managed to catch hold of news about her attaining the title Doluo rank, he had no idea where she was. Mu Yan had, in fact, reprimanded him severely because of this incident. The Evil Phoenix was one of the most gifted martial souls among the possible martial souls which evil soul masters could possess. This meant that Yang Xiaozhe had let a powerful monster loose. No one would know how many people would have to suffer under her wrath. Back then, Mu Yen had made the exact mistake, and naturally did not want to see his disciple repeat the same mistake. In fact, he was more worried that Yang Shaozhe would fall too deeply in love with her. Hence, Yang Shaozhe was grounded for 3 years as he studied and trained hard within Shrek Academy. It was the 3 years of closed-door cultivation, which helped him develop the ability to eventually become the dean of the martial soul department. After so many years, Yang Shaozhe finally saw Feng Ling again. The thoughts and feelings, which were racing through his body and mind, could only be understood by him alone. On the other hand, Feng Ling seemed to have completely forgotten about him. She did not even try to steal a glance at him, as she kept her gaze focused on Huo Yuhao. The powerful evil phoenix aura exploded like a geyser, as it radiated from her body. Huo Yuhao and Feng Ling were now facing one another, but neither of them took the initiative to start the attack. Huo Yuhao's aura was well concealed, whereas Feng Ling released her aura flamboyantly. Her aura caused the weather within a 1,000-meter radius to become extremely volatile. Even the powerful soul masters from both sides, who were spectating, had no choice but to release their soul power to defend themselves from her aura. Die! Feng Ling let out a cold grunt as her figure flickered. A series of strange-looking figures were left behind her as she sped forward. The shape of the figures resembled a purple phoenix. Feng Ling's right hand suddenly became incredibly huge as it transformed into a gigantic purple claw, as she raced towards Huo Yuhao. It was a simple, direct attack. She did not use her martial soul true body. It was almost as though she did not learn from Wu Yun's lesson. Huo Yuhao neither retreated nor tried to evade her attack. Instead, he dug his toes into the ground before launching himself forward in a ferocious manner. Similarly, he raised his right hand and waved it furiously. A gigantic dark golden claw, which spanned 100 meters, immediately enveloped Feng Ling's body. Dark golden terror claw. After seeing the intense glow and the incredibly sharp aura of the dark golden terror claw, which threatened to tear anything in its way apart, even Zhongli Wu was startled. He had never imagined Huo Yuhao to be so powerful. The dark golden terror claw Huo Yuhao had released was already on par with that of a 100,000-year dark golden terror claw bear. Feng Ling released a cold grunt as the wings behind her folded together, before she extended her right phoenix claw to grab Huo Yuhao's dark golden terror claw. She was trying to use her small claw against Huo Yuhao's humongous claw. Cling! A bright sound echoed in the air as a series of soul power explosions occurred at the point of contact. The loud explosive sounds traveled through the surrounding air and into the ears of the surrounding spectators. The series of explosions released countless sharp auras, which cut deep into the earth around them, resulting in humongous trenches around them. The troops from the Sun Moon Empire and the people from Shrek Academy had no choice but to activate their strongest defensive measures to protect themselves from the invincibly sharp fluctuations which radiated from Huo Yuhao and Feng Ling. Huo Yuhao remained stationary in the air, while Feng Ling had been forced backward by close to 40 meters. Her black long robe had been torn to pieces by the sharp aura, revealing the light armor built from black scales she was wearing under it. Feng Ling was completely decked in armor. Although Huo Yuhao didn't know how old she was, he was still in awe. Great figure. Huo Yuhao had gained the upper hand in their first clash. The strength of his dark golden terror claw suppressed Feng Ling's phoenix claws. Both of them seemed to have great chemistry with each other. They leapt into the sky at almost the same time and transformed into 2 different projections. Instantly, they shot more than 1,000 meters into the sky. The sky was a battlefield for truly strong individuals. Otherwise, everything on the ground would be torn apart from the shockwaves generated during an intense clash between powerful individuals. They were 100 meters away from each other. They continued to rise into the sky. No emotional undulations appeared in Feng Ling's eyes. She only glared at Huo Yuhao. Just as she was rising, her own stature was also growing rapidly. Huo Yuhao wasn't any inferior. Dark blue projections flashed around his body. The higher it was, the colder the air temperature. The number of ice elements also increased. With the help of the icy war god's armor, these ice elements were quickly absorbed into his body before they were turned into a part of his strength. Terrifying soul power undulations rippled through the air. The fight between them immediately reached a peak. A sharp phoenix cry sounded. In mid-air, Feng Ling opened her wings once again. Behind her, the sky instantly turned purplish-black. At the same time, a giant dark phoenix surfaced amidst the purplish-black. Its appearance was very subtle. Yang Xiaozhe's phoenix was agile, elegant and holy. Feng Ling's phoenix was sinister and evil. It seemed like it wanted to crush the sky. Bang! A strange pop could be heard from around Feng Ling's body. Her first soul ring also popped. The evil energy around her, which was already very strong, started to grow many times stronger. Her soul skill is different from before. Yang Xiaozhe muttered to himself. He had once had a relationship with Feng Ling. Back then, Feng Ling already had 6 rings, even though she wasn't as strong as she was right now. The soul skills that she demonstrated then were quite different from her soul skills right now. Elder Xian said, it must be a mutation after her evil phoenix awakened. As her martial soul mutated, her soul skills also mutated. This was something that had happened to Xu Sanxia and Bei Bei. Generally speaking, a mutation of a martial soul would lead to mutations in soul skills. Yang Xiaozhe said, I'm afraid Yuhao has underestimated his opponent this time. Feng Ling is already so strong. Zhong Liwu must be even stronger than her. A smile surfaced on Elder Xian's face. While Feng Ling is strong, Yuhao is no longer the same as before either. Today, he'll prove to everyone that he's one of the strongest in the world now. Xiaozhe, he's already exceeded you in terms of cultivation and fighting strength. While Feng Ling is strong, she's still worse than you. Yang Xiaozhe was astonished. He hadn't expected Elder Xian to have such a high opinion of Huo Yuhao. It was also at this moment that Huo Yuhao experienced a transformation. With his body as the center, a ball of blurry blue light shone in the air. At the start, it was deep blue. However, as it spread, it turned dimmer and dimmer. When it had spread more than 100 meters, it had turned completely white. This white was in great contrast with the purplish-black that Feng Ling had unleashed. The white started to scatter and turn into countless snowflakes that twisted and turned in the air. The snowflakes were pure white and carried a holy aura. When Feng Ling's evil energy spread towards Huo Yuhao, the snowflakes were stirred, but they easily dispelled the evil energy. The evil energy couldn't get close to Huo Yuhao at all. At the very start, it felt as if Feng Ling had gained the upper hand. Her evil energy engulfed most of the region, and even engulfed the position that Huo Yuhao was standing in. However, this changed very soon. The snowflakes around Huo Yuhao's body were continuously and steadily expanding. No matter how much Feng Ling tried to summon her evil energy, she couldn't breach the region covered by Huo Yuhao's snowflakes. Her strength was suppressed and forced back by the falling snowflakes. Originally, she had wanted to use her evil energy to influence Huo Yuhao. However, she was the one who was being influenced right now. Although she wasn't engulfed within his domain, the air temperature was still falling dramatically. Given her cultivation, she was still horrified when subjected to such a low temperature. The circulation of her soul power seemed to be affected too. Ultimate ice is actually so terrifying. Eternal domain of perpetual ice. Snowy dance of ultimate ice. Huo Yuhao had shut his eyes. Every snowflake he felt was like a part of his feelings and emotions. They kept on extending. The evil energy that Feng Ling unleashed was very strong and pure. Normally, she wouldn't be at a disadvantage even when up against his ultimate ice. However, Huo Yuhao's ultimate ice was no longer like it was before. After he completed the fusion of his second soul core, his ultimate ice reached an entirely new tier. The strongest point of the yin-yang complement was that yin was in yang, and yang was in yin. The strength of the snowy dance of ultimate ice was many times greater than before after it combined Huo Yuhao's ultimate dolor spiritual power, and the compressed, extremely low temperature of his ultimate ice. I can't allow this to continue. Feng Ling immediately judged. If Huo Yuhao continued to suppress her using his domain, she would be in a far worse position as time passed. Since she was losing in the aspect of elements, she could only rely on pure fighting strength. Her pitch-black seventh soul ring suddenly shone. Thick purplish-black light instantly devoured her. After this, purplish-black clouds separated in the sky, and a giant purplish-black phoenix rushed out. It carried a dazzling purplish-black tail flame, and brought strange ripples as it charged towards Huo Yuhao. As she was suppressed by the snowy dance of ultimate ice, Fengling finally resorted to using her martial soul true body. From afar, her phoenix seemed to be very elegant and dazzling. However, it had a pair of blood-red eyes, which completely destroyed any elegance it might have possessed. Wherever this phoenix passed, the air would distort tremendously. There seemed to be countless, pathetic screams echoing around the purplish glow that came from the phoenix, and fierce-looking faces could be subtly seen. What was the evil part of this evil phoenix? It was through devouring other soul masters. The evil phoenix devoured the martial souls of other soul masters to improve. Comparatively speaking, Fengling had killed very little compared to other evil soul masters. This was because she had to devour a martial soul that was similar to her own. Furthermore, it was only effective if the other party had a roughly similar cultivation. This was why she had wanted to devour Yang Xiaozhe's martial soul when she first experienced her awakening. When the aura of her martial soul was fully unleashed, she became even keener to devour martial souls. Even though Huo Yuhao had an ultimate martial soul, he was still affected. A fear that originated from his martial soul caused him to waver a little. Huo Yuhao drifted within his snowy dance of ultimate ice. Against Fengling's attack, he didn't immediately unleash his true body to resist it. Instead, he maintained his domain. Fengling was about to crash into his snowy dance of ultimate ice. A transcendent Doluo's true body was extremely terrifying, especially when she fully demonstrated her ability to devour. Fengling had absolute confidence that she could break Huo Yuhao's domain. Huo Yuhao's expression was very serious. Suddenly, he made a hugging motion. Immediately, the snowflakes in his snowy dance of ultimate ice gathered towards his body. They were moving directly towards his palms. Fengling's true body stopped in the air. He's given up on his domain. Don't tell me he's going to unleash his true body too. This was the first thought that arose in her mind. Following this, Fengling was in front of Huo Yuhao. A strong force of evil swept towards him. The evil phoenix true body already had its mouth wide open, and was about to devour Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao still didn't unleash his true body. He drifted in mid-air, as still as a statue. His icy war god's armor unleashed intense dark blue light. Huo Yuhao gradually pushed his right hand out to resist Fengling's evil phoenix true body. It was a clash between large and small. Right now, the difference between Huo Yuhao and Fengling appeared to be very great. What is he doing? He's actually not avoiding the true body of a transcendent Doluo, or unleashing his own true body to resist. Is he really so confident? Just as everyone was puzzled, Fengling suddenly stopped in the air. Her gigantic true body stopped in the air just like that. Following this, it was clear that a trace of icy blue was spreading to the rest of the evil phoenix's body from its head. This? Zhong Liwu's pupils shrank. His actually frozen little Feng's true body. What strength is this? Even an ultimate Doluo couldn't possibly be so strong, right? Little Feng's evil phoenix is considered one of the strongest among evil soul masters. Yes, Huo Yuhao had only used his snowless glacier. The strength of his snowy dance of ultimate ice was tapped by his soul core. He instantly compressed and gathered it before unleashing it using his snowless glacier. Fengling felt it the most. She felt that she wasn't just facing a palm, but a giant whirlpool of ice and snow. It was just that this whirlpool was formless. Her immense soul power was actually frozen by this formless ultimate ice. She was unable to move, and could only sense a terrifying chill engulfing her entire body. Could ice freeze soul power? Huo Yuhao gave her a definite answer to this question. A sharp scream sounded. Bright light suddenly exploded from the evil phoenix true body. A purplish sun above its head tore the clouds apart before revealing itself. When this purplish sun appeared, the strength of the evil phoenix true body instantly surged. Cracks started to appear on the frozen parts of its body. A huge purplish beam of light, that was more than 10 meters in diameter, also shot out from the purplish sun. This beam shot straight towards Huo Yuhao. Powerful. This was Huo Yuhao's first feeling. However, he had no intention of stepping back. His eyes shone with golden light before his body turned ethereal. Following this, a huge vertical eye that was more than 10 meters tall also appeared in mid-air. It was his martial soul true body, Eye of the Azura. Yes, Huo Yuhao had finally unleashed his true body. When his Eye of the Azura appeared, time seemed to slow down. Everything seemed to have been delayed. The purplish beam of light that was shooting straight towards him was no exception. Time has become slower. Is this a soul skill, or? The Eye of the Azura was bright gold. Around the eye, there were dense yet dazzling rose-gold sunray patterns. A strange glow was being exuded. This was Huo Yuhao's first time unleashing his true body ever since he made his breakthrough. Bright gold light shot out in the next instant, aimed at that beam of purplish light. As gold and purple clashed in the air, unprecedentedly bright lights were produced. Countless streaks of light scattered everywhere. It was very clear that 2 rings of light were spreading in a balanced manner. Within a region covering 50 square kilometers, this was completely clear and visible. Direct clash. This was a direct confrontation. Huo Yuhao chose to resist Feng Ling's all-out attack the hard way. Just as the 2 different types of lights clashed, an ethereal projection surfaced behind Huo Yuhao's Eye of the Azura. This projection was golden. It was huge, but ethereal. Destiny God Beast, Emperor Beast, the 3-eyed golden lion. The 3-eyed golden lion appeared out of thin air. A rose-gold halo also rose from below the pupil of the Eye of the Azura. The color of the Eye of the Azura immediately changed. 2 balls of light, black and white, intersected, fusing and turning into the core of the pupil of the Eye of the Azura. Following this, these 2 balls of light shot out. They were aimed at Feng Ling, who had just struggled her way out of Huo Yuhao's ultimate ice. Although Feng Ling had struggled her way out of Huo Yuhao's ultimate ice, the terrifying chill had still invaded her body and soul. Even her spiritual sea was affected by Huo Yuhao's ultimate ice. Feng Ling was certain that her true body would really have been completely frozen if she were not a transcendent Doluor, and if she didn't immediately invoke the strength of her soul core. It would be impossible for her to break free if she waited until then. His ultimate ice is frightening. It can freeze soul and spiritual power. Even so, Feng Ling's expression was still very fierce and serious. There was no look of fear in the blood-red eyes of her true body. There was only a look of arrogance. The black and white lights reached her almost instantly. Feng Ling's first reaction was to dodge. Her immense true body turned illusory, as if it had become transparent. However, something strange occurred. The black and white lights spread when they landed on her, and added 2 layers of light to her body. They did not lose their effect, just because her body had turned illusory. How was this possible? Feng Ling was in a daze. This ability of her true body was able to easily neutralize any soul power or material attack. But how did Huo Yuhao manage this? Was it a spiritual attack? However, Feng Ling didn't sense any spiritual attack. What was going on? Feng Ling was completely unaware. At this moment, his Eye of the Azura shot out a beam of light once again. This time, a beam of bright gold light shot straight at Feng Ling. Feng Ling groaned. A hostile look flashed across her eyes. The purplish sun above her didn't instantly unleash an attack to resist Huo Yuhao's spiritual shock. Rather, it shot out a beam of purple light towards the main body of the Eye of the Azura. She had the intention of perishing together with Huo Yuhao. In fact, Feng Ling was carrying a Class 9 spiritual defensive type soul tool. She was confident of resisting Huo Yuhao's spiritual shock. The devouring light of the evil phoenix that she unleashed couldn't be dealt with so easily. No one knew the true terrifying part of an evil phoenix. In fact, her origin strength came from spiritual attacks. She also devoured the spiritual origins of martial souls to strengthen her own body. The evil and devouring characteristics, ignited by spiritual power, was what spawned the purplish sun. This purplish sun was also Feng Ling's ninth soul skill, son of the evil phoenix. When she first became a titled Doluo, she couldn't even use this 100,000-year soul skill. She could only use it after she became a transcendent Doluo. It was also precisely why she could become a transcendent Doluo in a few decades, and become the vice leader of the Holy Ghost Church. The devouring light of the evil phoenix, unleashed by the son of the evil phoenix, had landed on the eye of the Azura earlier. Suddenly, the eye of the Azura was stained purple. The sunray patterns around the eye quickly retracted as a result, as if the eye had been greatly harmed. However, Feng Ling opened her eyes wide at the next instant. What she sensed was different from what others saw. She couldn't sense that Huo Yuhao had been attacked. This also meant that everything that had happened was just an illusion. Just as this feeling developed, Huo Yuhao's spiritual shock also hit her. At almost the next instant, Feng Ling's true body was destroyed by that immensely powerful beam of golden light. She reverted to her original form, and her entire body was also engulfed by the beam of golden light. A necklace released intense silver light to protect her. It demonstrated the strength of a Class 9 spiritual defensive type soul tool. Feng Ling only felt that her heartbeat had quickened. When she faced Huo Yuhao's spiritual shock, she finally understood why Wu Yun was defeated so quickly. He was simply too strong. His spiritual power was simply too immense. She felt as if she were facing the death god Doluo, Yi Shishui. Fortunately, she had a Class 9 defensive type soul tool. If it could block his attack, whatever was expended to create this soul tool would have been worth it. Feng Ling glared at Huo Yuhao. Right now, the problem she was facing was that she had just been struck by his spiritual shock. She couldn't use her spiritual power to detect where he was. In this way, she couldn't tell what Huo Yuhao was really up to. Ka. A slightly horrifying sound echoed. When Feng Ling lowered her head, she was astonished to find out that her necklace was already on the verge of failing. There were already cracks in it. It's a Class 9 soul tool. It's actually beginning to fail because of that fellow's attack. An indescribable fear surged in her heart. In her mind, she couldn't help but think about the black and white lights that had appeared on her body earlier. At this moment, Huo Yuhao's eye of the Azura was destroyed by the devouring light of the evil phoenix. His spiritual shock also ended. Piang. Feng Ling's soul tool cracked, but still finally managed to resist Huo Yuhao's spiritual shock. However, Feng Ling's fear didn't disappear. She only felt as if she was being watched by some kind of savage beast. It was a torturous feeling. Subconsciously, she unleashed her martial soul true body again. However, it was also at this moment that she heard an anxious exclamation. This was a very familiar voice. Didn't it come from Zhong Liwu? A huge vertical eye silently appeared behind Feng Ling. The eye of the Azura seemed to have transcended space. It was dazzling gold and 10 meters high. The sunray patterns were also still shining around it. Yes, the eye of the Azura hadn't been destroyed. It was still there. Golden light shot out. Compared to before, it might be a little weaker. However, it engulfed Feng Ling's entire body. Feng Ling's body turned rigid. Her true body turned into countless streaks of purplish smoke that quickly dissipated. She was even more shocked to realize that there was no movement in her spiritual sea. Against such a spiritual attack, she was completely unable to resist. The terrifying spiritual power instantly struck her brain. Feng Ling groaned, and her body shook in the air. After that, she passed out. The golden light retracted, and a hand grabbed her neck. Huo Yuhao also jolted himself out from his eye of the Azura. The entire place descended into silence. Second. She was the second to be defeated. She was even a transcendent Doluo, the evil phoenix Doluo. The powerful vice leader of the Holy Ghost Church was defeated just like that. If Huo Yuhao had wanted to kill her, he could have done so earlier. What Huo Yuhao did wasn't complicated at all. However, only he was capable of doing it. Before he unleashed his spiritual shock, it was evident that the divine skill the three-eyed golden lion conferred onto Huo Yuhao was used on Feng Ling. It was destiny's demise, spiritual reaving. All material and spiritual defenses could be overcome by this skill. While a Class 9 spiritual defensive type soul tool was strong, it could only block Huo Yuhao's all-out attack. When he unleashed that strike earlier, Huo Yuhao had actually used his spiritual interference domain too. His spiritual interference domain had caused Feng Ling's lock-on and vision to be slightly off. This was why her devouring light of the evil phoenix didn't actually hit him, but a projection that Huo Yuhao had imitated through his spiritual interference domain and imitation. This video will end here.